Hi, it's Brian Glicklick, and I'm here today to talk to you about digital forensics in crisis management. And I'm going to use a couple of case studies to illustrate common conundrums we run into. I've changed enough details so that if you think you recognize the people involved in these matters, you probably don't. The first is a worldwide A-list celebrity. You know who she is. And she was being tracked by a stalker through email. It was just ranging on being a criminal matter, but hadn't quite gotten there yet. Here's how it worked. She would get emails from this individual that were sent to her private email address, and they would appear in her email panel. And about 5 minutes after she saw them, she would get a follow-up email from the same person that indicated he knew exactly where she was, and it was in some unusual locations. Hi, I see you're in Barbados today. How's the weather? Obviously, she was very alarmed by this, and she contacted our firm through her management to figure out how to resolve it. So the steps we go through in something like this are pretty straightforward and start with a risk assessment. We needed to understand exactly how he was doing this and what kind of threat he was. In order to determine how he was doing it, we took a forensic look at the emails he was sending. And as some of you have probably guessed, he was using a tracking pixel inside the emails. For those unaware, a tracking pixel is a small, transparent bug that can be put in emails with people who have a certain amount of technical knowledge that phones back home the IP address of where the email is opened. And once you have that IP address, it's fairly straightforward to figure out the geography of the person. So he'd placed this tracking bug in the emails, and because of the way her email settings were set up, as soon as she opened the email, it would phone home and tell him exactly where she was. So now we knew how he was doing it. The thing about most stalkers is that they aren't really trying to stay completely hidden. We were able to trace back his IP address from the headers in his emails, as well as get a tentative identity of who he was through the email address itself. The way we do that is by looking at patterns in emails. So, for example, in a matter like this, he was using an email address that was similar to one he had used on other websites where he was identifiable. So now we knew who he was. From that, we performed a risk assessment on him and determined that he was a college student, had no criminal record and no background of other kinds of arrests. So that informed our strategy for how to resolve the situation. The way we did so was by contacting him directly, contacting his parents, advising them that we knew who he was, that his actions were unacceptable, and that if he did it even one more time, it would result in an FBI investigation and likely criminal charges for cyber harassment or cyber stalking, depending on the nature of his threats. We also gave the information to her team, and her attorney sent a similar letter. The idea behind contacting his parents was that in a situation like this, oftentimes the parents are horrified at their kid's behavior and they're willing to intercede on our behalf to stop the activity. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. He went away, we never heard from him again, and the situation was almost fully resolved. The last step in a matter like this is to work with the target to harden up her digital security so that things like this can't happen again. We went through a multi-step process with her. The most important, of course, was turning off automatic image resolution in her emails so that images wouldn't download until she gave it permission, except from known senders. That reduces risks enormously. Of course, with all clients, we go through a similar security analysis that involves setting up multi-factor authentication on all accounts, auditing their devices for malicious software, looking at the way they connect to the internet when they're at home and on the road, setting up VPNs and so on. And in the process of doing that, we eliminated the risk vector for her. Now, I want to tell you about a different kind of case. This was one where we were representing an ultra-high net worth couple that had wound up in litigation with some people who used to work in their household. The people that used to work in their household were a couple themselves. and they had engaged in some behavior that was illegal. Specifically, they were stealing from the couple and they were discharged. Their response to this was to file a highly salacious civil lawsuit against my clients and then use media, specifically tabloid media, to repeat one salacious allegation after another. Of course, the allegations were completely false, but it's very difficult to go after media for reproducing false allegations that they are told by somebody else. The matter was in court, and it was damaging my client's reputation severely. The first step was to get an order from the judge that would stop all external communication. This kind of order stops all parties from talking in public about the case, and the judge issued one. About 2 weeks after that, we noticed that my client's Wikipedia page had been changed to include all sorts of similar allegations in violation of the judge's order if it came from the couple that was the adversary to my client. So now we had a new axis to pursue, and this was the one that turned out to be most useful, because while media has a shield law to protect them from revealing sources, Wikipedia doesn't have anything like that at all. So we worked with our client's counsel to subpoena Wikipedia for all knowable information about the account that had made these changes. And since we've done this quite a bit, we knew exactly what to ask for in the way of email addresses used to register accounts, IP addresses, MAC addresses of devices, so that we could hopefully conclusively prove who was behind it. It took a couple of months for Wikipedia to provide the subpoena information. They tend to, like most social media channels, go back to the target of the subpoena and give them time to attempt to quash it if they wish. And in this case, that did not happen. So Wikipedia ultimately produced the information, and we were able to use it to prove conclusively that the couple had made the Wikipedia edits in violation of the judge's order. So we took that information back to the judge, and the judge issued a sanctions order against the opposition to my clients. And it was just a few weeks later that the judge found completely in my client's favor. So when people think about crisis communications, often they think about it in terms of media management, dealing with bad stories, and that's true. But there's a lot more to it than that. In cases like these, the opportunity to use digital forensics, public sources research, sometimes hire PIs to dig in deeper and get other information is key to unwinding these kinds of problems.